I was really influenced by the Beano. I mean, I absolutely was 100% trying to pull it out of the Beano. Back in the day, he'd be slippered by his dad. There'd be a different coloured slipper and a different parent slapping a different kid if you flicked through the bottom right-hand corner of every page of the Beano. We had to create something where he wasn't just a menace. The style has changed, and in Dennis's case, continued to develop and change since I did it. These things are organic, they're alive, they keep moving with the times. So I drew the Dennis of mid 1990s. I wrote about 4 or 5 pilot episodes for the Numskulls. I kept banging on DC Thompson's door saying, "Let's do the Numskulls."
I was going to ask this later, but maybe we can clear it up now. There's a big debate in my comments. Who invented Slipper and the Colonel? Was it the TV show? Was it the comic? I've always said it was the TV show, or was it a joint venture? Could you answer that?
A likely story.
Hi everybody, it's me, Old Ashley, with my good friend Tony Collingwood, the director of Dennis the Menace and many other beloved cartoons, The Secret Show, The Cat in the Hat Knows a Lot, and he even does his own short animated personal projects, Drawing Land and Candle Detective, is it?
Candle Cops, that one.
Candle Cops. Thanks for joining us here today, Tony. How are you doing? How are you feeling today?
I'm doing good. I'm peaking. I think everything is wonderful. I'm very happy. Great to be on your channel. So yeah, all good.
It's good to have you. So just to start, so I'm mostly a Beano channel, so I wanted to ask you, could you tell me about your history with the Beano and comic books in general? Did you read them a lot as a kid, or was it something you discovered when making the show?
No, I was there. I had the Beano drop on the mat once a week. Beano, then the Dandy, then Beezer and Topper. I really loved the Topper because it was almost the same size as my dad's newspaper. You really felt like a grown-up reading the Topper. It was one of those nice, larger format comics. So, no, I lived through the whole DC Thompson comic childhood. So, it wasn't a case of me having to bone up on who Dennis the Menace was when I was asked to pitch the show. So yeah, very much embedded in my history.
Did you have any favorite characters from any of the comics? I know the Topper had Nick Kelly, and we would see him appear in the show later on, but was there any characters that stood out that you still remember today?
I still remember all of them, but I did love Nick Kelly, and that is why he did appear in Dennis and Nasher. But I also loved Dennis. I mean, when you look at the Beano and the Dandy in all of the comics, it's pretty much a naughty kid with long-suffering parents. The format's the same, just different kids to a degree. You have Billy the Wiz. Some of them have different attributes. But things like the Numskulls, I loved that because it was a different format. And at the time, I'd never seen anything like that, all these little characters inside someone's head. And when I was a kid, it was a grown-up who had the Numskulls in the head. So the Numskulls were like the children animating an adult. And I think then they did move it to a child having Numskulls later on.
Yeah, the Numskulls are really interesting. They kind of went from Beezer, I think, to the Beano, to the Dandy, back to the Beano. So they've had a few different forms.
They did, but I think good ones. And when they know they've got a good format, then it does move around with where they think they can place it best. So no, I love that one. I love that. In fact, I wrote about 4 or 5 pilot episodes for the Numskulls. I kept banging on DC Thompson's door saying, "Let's do the Numskulls." But it never came to pass, unfortunately.
That would have been incredible. Like there was movies later on, Inside Out, which is kind of Numskull-esque. You could have done it before them.
I know, when that came out, I was like, they're never going to do the Numskulls now. It looked like we're copying them. But
yeah. Unfair. We needed a Numskulls cartoon.
Yeah.
Was there any characters you enjoyed drawing from the Beano or from the Topper, any of those comics? Or
as a kid or as a grown-up? But
both.
Yeah. I think all children, if you're into drawing cartoons or into art, you always begin by copying your favorite characters, coming away from a Disney movie and coming home and starting to draw those characters. So yeah, I think I did like drawing some of the Beano characters, usually the ones with the round faces, because people like Pie Face, because completely round face, and easier to draw than ones with more complicated features as a child. So yeah, I think I always drew cartoons right the way. I can't remember not drawing them.
The round face makes sense. A very popular YouTuber, or at least he was someone called the Odd Ones Out. And I think half his popularity is his character was just a round face. Everybody could draw it or do their version of it. So when I was researching you, I see you write, you draw, you animate, you direct, you do it all. What inspired your creativity, and is there any one thing you enjoy doing more than the others? Do you prefer writing? Do you prefer drawing? What would be your favourite?
I think the thing I love about animation or making animated shows is that it is about a lot of different things happening at once. And as a kid, I always drew, and I used to write plays, and I loved radio comedy like The Goons. So I used to, my first LP, when people bought LPs, long-playing records for the youngsters, my first one was BBC Sound Effects LP number 4. So that's how sad I was as a kid. So I loved sound effects, creating shows, drawing, writing, and everything I loved came together in animation. So, and in a way that's still the case. Filmmaking for me brings everything I enjoy doing together. Music behind something, the effects, bringing the actors in, creating that whole out of parts.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, very simple question, but it's a complicated answer in a way because it's just all of these things working together. No one thing is it. And you never know quite what a film's going to be like until all these elements come into play together and you've done the mix.
It's like a big puzzle. You have to put all these pieces together.
Yeah, and I love that from day to day I'm doing different things. But I guess I spend a lot of time writing and drawing. Those are the two things that I personally do most. And so when I'm making personal films, those are the two elements, the constants, I guess.
As someone told me once, or I read somewhere, it's like telling a joke and then waiting a year and a half to see if anyone finds it funny.
Yeah, the only track you can't mix is the laugh track. And so, especially if you're at festivals, you really don't know if you've paced it right for the laugh. I know some live action directors who, when they're doing a rough cut of a movie, they'll go and do a test screening and they'll record the audience and then go back in the edit and lay up the laugh track to see if they trod on their own jokes with the laughs and then retime the film. But yeah, it is like being a stand-up. If you're doing comedy, it's like being a stand-up without having to check it out week after week with the audience to refine the act. You've got to somehow get it right first time. So yeah, interesting question. Yeah, it's something that is a frustration sometimes that you can't have another go.
Yeah, and sometimes you don't learn till later. I know from my own projects where I'm like, this is so funny, this is so great, and then the minute I show people, it's silence, and you're just, in that moment, it connects like, no, that should have been cut, that should have been changed.
Yeah, and I mean, the tricky thing when you're doing stuff for kids is you start writing for your peers, for other animation directors and other grown-ups who are interested in it. You write these lovely, sophisticated jokes and ideas, and then I remember one time going into a school to test out an early episode of Dennis the Menace. Basically, I was supposed to be doing research, but truth be told, I was just going there to show off. Just show your film to a bunch of kids. And they didn't laugh at all my clever jokes. They only laughed when somebody's trousers were pulled down. And that was it. Got the biggest laugh.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking sometimes.
It is, but it does teach you a lesson that, just remember who your audience are. You're not writing for yourself to a degree. You're writing for an audience and know what age group you're writing for and very much tailor your material to them. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Talking about the Dennis the Menace show, so how did producing the Dennis cartoon come about? Was it something your studio pitched for, or were you approached by DC Thompson to make it?
Well, I'd been working for Hit Entertainment, which was a distribution company that came out of the ashes of Henson's company when they'd sold to Disney at one point, and then a guy called Peter Orton ran a company called Hit Entertainment, and I'd made a TV series called Captain Zed and the Z-Zone, which is the first TV series I'd ever made for them, and then I made a series called Oscar's Orchestra, which was along similar format to Dennis the Menace. They were done in 13 episodes of 22 minutes each, and so that's the back history to it. So when Peter Orton and Hit had worked with DC Thompson to come up with the idea of making this series, I was on the call list of animation studios and creatives that they said, do you want to pitch for the show? So rather than just go in and pitch, I wrote an episode because you play to your strengths. And even though I was a writer-director running a company, I was a screenplay writer. I write scripts. So I wrote Hair Today, Gone Tomorrow, which was based on my dad's barber when he was a kid called Slasher Brown.
Really?
And my dad and all his brothers hated going to Slasher Brown because they just came away with no hair. And so I thought it was a great name for a barber. And I thought, well, Dennis with his distinctive hair, what a great way of saying we're going to get rid of Dennis's hair. So I wrote that as the pilot script and formatted the show at the same time. So I can't remember the question, but yeah. But yeah, that's how it came about. That's right. That's how it came about. It was a pitch.
I think that's such a great first episode idea for Dennis, because I think even more than his striped jumper, people know him for his big, bushy, wild hair, and then you start off with trying to cut it off.
Yeah, it just seemed nice to create a format and then try and break it in the first episode. But if you look back over Dennis since the very beginning, I mean, he has changed in the same way that when you look at early Mickey Mouse cartoons, how the style has changed, and in Dennis's case, continued to develop and change since I did him. These things are organic; they're alive. They keep moving with the times. So I drew the Dennis of mid 1990s. So that was the guy that we used and played with.
I think this is part of why the show I think is so good. You were using kind of your own memories of childhood, this slasher hairdresser you and your brothers had, and just putting into the show. I was a kid, I hated haircuts. It's very relatable, I think, to kids.
Yeah, I think when it comes to formatting the show and actually making the show, there was a lot that had to be done from the comic, because if you were even, I think, slippering the kid in the bottom right-hand corner of every story had pretty much gone by the time the mid-90s were happening, but it was still one-page or a two-page spread of gags on a theme. He's got a pea shooter, and there's 10 gags of the pea shooter, and then he gets his comeuppance at the end. Back in the day, he'd be slippered by his dad. There'll be a different coloured slipper and a different parent slapping a different kid if you flicked through the bottom right-hand corner of every page of the Beano. So we had to create something where he wasn't just a menace. And I know this is something that people have talked about quite a bit, and at times we were frustrated about when we were making the show, which is, how can you have a TV series about Dennis the Menace where he isn't just a menace? And the truth is, if you're doing a 20-minute story on anything, you can't just have a kid going around hitting people or throwing things or just being bad. So there has to be a cause and effect. So it made for better stories. So something would happen to Dennis that he had to fight against.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. There was an earlier Dennis show, a puppet one, which was basically the comic format. It would just be him being terrible, but it would only be 7 minutes long.
Yeah.
So, and he would always be punished some way at the end. But 22 minutes, you need a meatier, more ambitious story, I think.
Yeah, you have to get the 3-act structure. I mean, each episode, they were done in 3 acts. So it's set up, conflict, resolve, which is the basic 3-act structure of storytelling. So we followed that, really. It was, and also I thought, well, Dennis is the ultimate professional 10-year-old, so I will surround him with different types of adults. So I made grown-ups around him. I made Dad surprised every time that he's done something wrong. It's just like he's got the same, oh my goodness, what have you done? Each time, it doesn't matter how many times Dennis has done something bad, Dad is just as surprised and horrified that he's been the naughty boy. And Mum would always be benign and, oh, Dennis, and be very sort of trying to let the dust settle all the time. The Colonel was the ultimate adult foiled for any child. He was, he wouldn't want children to come out of the hospital after being born until they're at least 20. They shouldn't even be allowed out of the hospital, for goodness sake, at that age. So he just was absolutely against childhood completely.
My favourite joke you wrote for the Colonel was when someone asked him, doesn't he like children? And he just straight away, don't know, never eaten one.
Yes, it's, I think that's been, I probably did write that, but I think it's probably been said 1,000 times, that gag. But that was, and then Sergeant Slipper was benign. He was the nicest adult, I thought. The name Sergeant Slipper was, that was created, we'd made up the character, and the designer, Trevor Ricketts, said, let's call him Sergeant Slipper as a reminder of all the slippers that were used in the past to hit kids. So that's where the name came from. It was like a little nod to the past.
That's such a great reference. I remember someone told me that a few years ago, and my head almost exploded with, of course.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask this later, but maybe we can clear it up now. There's a big debate in my comments. Who invented Slipper and the Colonel? Was it the TV show? Was it the comic? I've always said it was the TV show, or was it a joint venture? Could you answer that?
It was me.
I knew it.
So, yeah, the Colonel was based on a guy that lived opposite me when I was a child in Hull, who was just like he just hated us playing in the street, and so so he became the Colonel.
Did he have a camouflage painted house as well, or was that?
No, that was all. I just called him the Colonel, and then Trevor Ricketts, the designer, he sort of ran with that, and so we made him. And he was voiced by John Baddeley, so a brilliant actor. I'd worked with John on Oscar's Orchestra, the series we'd done before. He'd played Monty the violin. He'd done him like another sort of stiff upper lip soldier type.
Stiff upper lip, yes.
Whereas I am the hero's number 2, the strikingly striking Monty.
The design that you mentioned, I think the designer, whoever put it together, it's underrated in the show. The Colonel's house, the camouflage, his wall is like those bags you would have in the trenches.
Yeah.
It was just so well put together, just so well designed, thought through.
Yeah, no, Trevor's brilliant. I mean, Trevor Ricketts designed that series. I mean, he did a lot of the design work on season 1, and Dennis's hair was a problem because
I can imagine,
because Dennis in the comic, it's an illustration. It's illustrated, and from panel to panel, he looks different. And there is that thing of the mouth going underneath the eyes, which is a stylized way of drawing him in the comics, which works beautifully. And it's how far can we take that design? And a lot of changes were made, but the whole point was you shouldn't notice the changes when it's moving. We have to adapt it. In the same way, the format for the storytelling had to be adapted without people realizing it. When they watched it, it should feel like they were just watching a comic. But with the hair, I guess one thing we thought was the best thing was Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mouse has the two things, and when he turns his head, they remain there. If you ever look at a Mickey Mouse cartoon, the early ones, because they never move in 3 dimensions. You never see a 3-dimensional thing of those 2 ears. They're always exactly the same wherever his head goes. So we tried that with Dennis, because those spikes, you can't animate a black surface with those sharp spikes if we were going to go with that illustrative design sense. And so if you look at it, he'll move his head round, but the spikes will stay pretty much in the same position.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we got this weird thing going on where it seemed like Nasher was on his head. It just seemed weird. It seemed like his hair was alive. So, and they're all numbered in the animators. We'd number the spikes to keep it all the same.
You'd have to. I know when I draw Dennis, it's my least favorite thing, drawing all those spikes, not having them be too big, too short, because it can dramatically change the look. And
it can.
Your show kept it so consistent, and it makes sense doing the Mickey Mouse not moving, just so you can kind of keep it.
Yeah.
In the pilot episode, I noticed I kind of liked it. His hair changes almost every shot. It's always kind of moving, but you don't really notice it in a distracting way. It just kind of adds to his wildness.
Yeah, it was tricky. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But thank you for liking it, because we always spotted where it had gone wrong. But in fact, a similar thing happened with Dr. Seuss with The Cat in the Hat, where we made a series of The Cat in the Hat. And Seuss only ever drew him from 3/4 angle, where he's just slightly to the side. You never saw front on in any of, if you look at any of the Seuss books with the Cat in the Hat in, you very rarely, if ever, see him sideways or absolute front on. It's always 3/4. So in the animation, we only ever showed his face 3/4, and then it carried on looking like him, which is why when you see the movie with Mike Myers in a Cat in the Hat suit, it looks a bit spooky, because you're seeing the cat from angles that you'd never normally have seen him from. If you follow exactly the design conceits of the originals, that is, now they've adapted the designs of certain characters so you can move them around. But we were going for the absolute comic look.
It's one of the difficult things in design. You might draw a really nice front face or side face, but then trying to draw that from each angle, all of a sudden it doesn't make any sense, and you just kind of have to cheat it sometimes.
Yeah, if ever I'm designing a character, it's never one drawing. You're just constantly drawing them in the round. you're sort of adapting and drawing them at all these different angles at the same time, so you never fall into the trap of enjoying one drawing of the character, because then you're an illustrator, you're not an animator, you're not designing an animated character.
Yeah.
You always have to be thinking in the round.
Did you have any involvement in the Beano video or the Beano video stars, or did they have any influence on the show? Was there any connection, or was it all completely separate?
All completely separate. We just began again. I think there'd been some 2 or 1 video made. Was it Terry Ward directed them? I think it was.
Terry Ward, I think.
Yeah.
At least one of them. Maybe both.
Yeah. His company made them as shorts, but we didn't reference them. We just began again.
I think in the second one they have a General Colonel-like character, so that was the only reason I was wondering about it.
Really? Oh, I'll have to go have a look at that. But
it's different to your concept. It's just Dennis attacking an army base where they're doing some drills.
Okay. Right.
But it was interesting they both had kind of a General Colonel character.
Yeah, interesting. But yes, no, we didn't reference that.
How was the development? Were you given a free net to adapt, or were DC Thompson hands-on with specific guidelines, never show Dennis doing this, make Walter this way? Was there any restrictions, or was it more TV itself causing restrictions to how you developed the show?
It was more TV causing any restrictions, where we had to just follow basic guidelines, really, for kids' TV. Writers do sometimes get annoyed at TV channels sanitizing shows, but when you look back at the shows that you enjoyed as a child, they did have a deep influence on you. You do really soak them in. So there is a responsibility on those making the shows. And I certainly did feel that responsibility more with preschool shows than with ones for Dennis's age group. But you do have to be mindful of how you're presenting the world to children and how you're presenting stories and how people behave moralistically within the stories. And it doesn't stop you being funny or telling great stories. In fact, it stops you from telling bad stories, really, because it's just too easy to go into those areas of either too rude or too violent or too sweary, and they're just not as satisfying as stories, really.
I agree. I think the restrictions always help. There's a very good comic. I don't know if you ever had a chance to read it. It was called Oink.
Yes. Yeah.
It was restricted because it was for kids, but it had like a more Viz adult kind of humor to it.
Right.
And I think it's a better comic than the Viz just because of that restriction. It's more palatable, I guess.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I vaguely remember that one, but I think TV has more restrictions than the comics to a degree. So one just has to be very careful with it. And also DC Thompson were very hands-on. Walter Furner was the executive at DC Thompson, who was there throughout everything. He'd come to the voice casting sessions. Interesting thing, of course, everybody at DC Thompson assumed that Dennis would have a Scottish accent.
Yeah.
And I'm sure everybody in England assumed British, and in Wales and wherever you are from, because you identify with him. So I think one of the hardest parts of developing the show was finding the right voice for Dennis. It was Richard Pearce. Richard Pearce had just the right energy.
Maybe it's because I was a child when I watched it, but when I think Dennis the Menace, that's the voice that always comes out of my head.
Yeah, I think, whatever. It's like most people's their favourite Disney film is the Disney film they saw when they were 8. It's not necessarily about. It's just when you're around the right age, that's the one that you enjoyed most. Same with you, Doctor Who. Your favourite Doctor Who is probably when you were 8 years old.
Yeah, it's Star Wars. Your favourite Star Wars is the prequels, if that's when you grew up. If you didn't, you don't like it at all, and you're very vocal about
That's
it.
right, yeah.
Was writing for the character of Dennis being a menace like a big challenge? We kind of touched upon it. Like, how do you make him likable? Because he is a bully generally in the comics, and I think there's only one episode where you kind of go full Dennis the Menace, but he's still, just maybe it's the voice, but he's still somehow likable in your show despite these terrible things he does.
I think he has to be likable. You have to identify with him. You have to put him in situations where he has to get out of them in a way that only Dennis would, without him instigating something that is wrong and then getting away with it. It has to be events have conspired against him to create this moment, and then he has to struggle through it and get out the other end. So, and the writing for it, I guess the best example of when I understood something about the format was an episode called Bath Night Club, which is one of my favourites because it Thursday night was Bath Night, and if Dennis managed to get away with not being caught by his parents on Bath Night, then they would literally say to him, "I'll catch you next Thursday, Dennis." It's like, what? Why not Friday? But it's this childlike quality of the parents. It's almost as if it's been written by a child, that a child can't think about how an adult would behave beyond how they could behave, other than they're against them. And there was one scene that I think Ewan Coe is the editor of the Beano. I think it was written in the Beano, or maybe I wrote it in. I don't know. It was a combination of the bank manager. Dennis's dad was trying to get a loan to pay for all the windows that Dennis had smashed. He had to pay for, and the bank manager said, "Right, so what's your name?" He goes, Dad, and Mum goes, Mum. He goes, "I'm sorry, sir. Can I have your full name, please?" And he goes, Dennis's dad. Dennis's mum. Oh, thank you very much. And that sort of showed what adults, they weren't any more intelligent than that. In fact, there was a program I wrote in one episode where it was very late at night, and it was called Boring Programs for Grown-Ups. Because that's what kids assume grown-ups watch. They watch these boring old people talking around tables late at night for some reason.
I've tried to explain the Beano humour to people sometimes. They just don't understand. They don't understand why their name is just Mom and why their name is Dad. And I just say, it's British humour. Don't overthink it. But now when I tell them, I can tell them it's the perspective of a child. Their dad is just Dad.
Yeah, and that's it. And that sort of opened up the storytelling in a way. Because you didn't have to think it through. An adult wouldn't do that. You think, well, a child would think an adult could do that. And my key audience are children. So
I think that episode is my favourite episode growing up, the Bath Nightclub one, so I'm glad you mentioned it. I think everything in that episode just makes Dennis the coolest kid in the world, particularly his treehouse, which has a hollowed out tree that he can tunnel back to his own home.
Yeah, it was. I liked it because the plotting of it was so. Everything made sense as the film went along, as the episode went along, and it all culminated in a big chase. And it all just, when you've written something that just feels right, you sort of think, yes, if they could all just be. Oh, that one, and also Summer Holiday, it might have been called, where they went.
I love that one too.
They went to. I just was really pleased with the premise of they arrive at their landlady's place for their summer holiday on the coast, but they're not allowed dogs. So they have to pretend that Nasha is Dennis's little brother and put him in
a very ugly baby.
That is the ugliest baby I've ever seen in my life. It's Prunella Scales saying that. Yeah.
I have to say, with my hand on my heart, that is the ugliest baby I've ever seen in my life.
Dennis has a great comeback to that. So he said, "Well, I'm sure, as you are aware, looks aren't everything."
Did he say that? Yeah, it's so long ago. But yeah.
In that episode as well, it's been stuck in my head for years. The way she phrases it raises my complaint.
Yeah, can't remember.
So many good quotes in that episode. I think season 2 I might like more than one, but my favourite episode is definitely Bath Night Club.
Yeah, no, I made sure we had our best storyboard artist on that one. It was when you know a good one's going through, because you're starting another episode every week in production, and they go through. It may take about 20 weeks to make a show, but it's like that old thing of spinning plates on sticks. Week 1 you've got one show spinning. By week 10 you're running around keeping 10 of them in the air as they go through the production system. So,
were you influenced by any other cartoons or shows at the time? Like characters like Mom and Pieface really remind me of the humor from Danger Mouse, if you're familiar with Danger Mouse.
Yeah.
And shows like that. Characters taking expressions and idioms literally, just kind of.
Yeah, I love Danger Mouse. I remember it. It happening. Yeah, it was happening a few years before, or maybe. It was before Dennis, but I think I certainly didn't. I was really influenced by the Beano. I absolutely was 100% trying to pull it out of the Beano, and everybody around me, all the team, were all just trying to bring Dennis to life. And every show you do has to have its own tone, its own style, something where you couldn't have told that story in a different TV series. It has to have its own take on the world, and so you're always looking for that element. I think subconsciously you're influenced obviously by the shows around you, but for me it was always just trying to do Dennis justice, and make it happen. And we all lived it, for 2 years. Absolutely loved every single second of it. So it was a labour of love, and the DC Thompson people live and breathe it too. And when they knew we felt the same way, it wasn't just a job. It was a big part of our lives at the time. And it was just a very harmonious relationship.
Yeah, I think one episode that really gets across just how referential you are to the Beano was Dennis and the Grown-Ups, where you have all the grown-ups in this AA-like meeting, and they're each reminding the person or telling the person about a time Dennis menaced them. And there's the postman gets bit in the ass with like the Gnasher's extendable teeth. That seems like right from a comic strip.
Yes, yeah, I did like that one. Yeah, I'd forgotten about that. It's yes, like a support group for people that Dennis has terrorized. Yeah. In the pilot, Here Today, Gone Tomorrow, I think is a very successful pilot. It introduces the character, most of the supporting cast. Was there any feedback after making the pilot? Did you have to change anything, or was it just straight into production after that episode? Were they happy right away? I think we were in production. We didn't actually make. It was a pilot script, but by the time we began, that was it. We launched straight into production. We started with Here Today, Gone Tomorrow, and on the second week, we began episode 2. So it was never make the pilot episode, see what everyone thinks, and then go into production. It was just straight into production based on the designs and the scripts. By then, we'd written, obviously, 6 or 7 scripts before we went into production. So the tone and the style of it, I can't remember if there was a lot of rewriting done. I know that I remember when I wrote the pilot, I didn't tell anybody at the time, but O.J. Simpson had just had that slow chase down the motorway. Do you remember?
Yeah, I got that reference in the episode. They're chasing Dennis in his go-kart thing with Nash Slay.
Yeah, and I never said that to anyone, though it was probably obvious, but now he'd never have gotten away with a parody of a guy who may have committed murder, being done on a cartoon show. But
I think that's what makes the show so good, because I watched it as a kid. I loved it as a kid. I'd have no idea who O.J. Simpson was. No. And then watching it as I did recently, I was like, oh my god, this is an O.J. Simpson reference happening in Dennis the Menace.
Yeah. Yeah, but it was a very light reference. I mean, it was just more inspired by rather than we didn't do anything that was overtly about. It was just a nice. We were all watching this chase down a motorway, and I thought it was quite fun at the time. I had to have a big moment with all the barbers chasing Dennis. So it seemed to work.
It's fun. I think you do more in the first season. You have a lot of TV gags. They're always cutting to TV. There's always characters on the TV. Yeah. Something's always happening with the TV.
Yeah.
What was the inspiration for that? Was it just what was on your mind at the time?
All I know is that to speed up any story, if I can use a news report to get me through to the next big chase sequence or the next big thing happening, because the last thing you want to do in a kids show is mark time. It's you've just got to keep things moving, and so sometimes using TV reports, you can use it for exposition. Just to have a reporter telling the audience what's just happened, or the bridge scene, the boring bit. They just talk it through very quickly, and then you get on to the next exciting bit. So I think we did that because one's always mindful, especially with 20 minutes. You just want to keep it moving.
Yeah, I think the best use of it you do is in the Secret Diary. There's a part with like TV and newspaper articles. For example, it's like at Spinning Paper, Dad's going to have a movie. Dad says, no way. The director spins up. Yes, you are. The dad again, no, you're not.
Yeah.
You kind of get through 3 months of plot in like a minute.
Yeah. Well, it's, as I say, just move it through. Just keep the exciting bits. So...
Yeah, that's something I really noticed rewatching it, because sometimes I watch these old cartoons and I'm kind of bracing myself for the pacing. I'm expecting something very slow.
Yeah.
There is no slow pacing in Dennis the Menace. It's not rush, it's all action all the time. Yeah. It's really well put together. And I think that's the hardest thing to do. When I was a student, I think, I made this great little cartoon. 3 minutes feels like 10. Yeah. Whereas in your show, it's 22 minutes. It feels like 10 minutes. It's so well paced.
I think, if you train because I trained as an animator, and so obviously back in the day when it was all drawn, you're drawing 12, a minimum of 12 drawings a second, and so when you storyboard something out, it has to be really worth spending your time animating. So it's the best way to make you self-edit your stories is the knowledge that you're going to have to sit there and actually animate this thing at 12 drawings a second. So is that line really necessary? Is that scene really necessary? So you self-edit. It's the best way to learn, is to be doing it all yourself rather than handing it out to other people. So I think that did hone certainly me as a writer in animation. And I know I've occasionally said to my kids, actually they're men now, but when my kids were kids, I'd say, "Oh, I love this film, a big action film," and we'd put it on the TV, and just what you're saying, suddenly a guy will say, "Right, I'm going to the police station now," and then you'd see him walk down the stairs, get in his car, start the car up, drive, the scene of him driving, arrive at the police station, get out and get up. All these long scenes in movies back in the 70s. Whereas now, film language is just so fast.
I love old movies. I even love silent movies. But if you ever watch an old James Bond, there could be an entire 3-minute scene of him walking from the end of a hallway to the top of the hallway. You're like, oh my God, maybe speed this up a little.
And then Jason Bourne came along and just changed everything. I mean, that cutting on that was when it all changed big time.
Talking about the voice cast now, I said earlier I love Richard Pearce. I think he's amazing, but then you have Kerry Shale, the perfect Nasher voice. Why even get anyone else after him? John Baddeley we've talked a little bit about. Judy Bennett, who I noticed is married to another Collingwood, so I don't know if that's a coincidence.
Pure coincidence, yeah.
Oh, really? And what was the casting audition process like? Did you have your kind of actors in mind, or did you do a casting call, or how did you go about casting these voices?
I had certain actors in mind, and then because obviously DC Thompson and other production companies had a vested interest in this happening, they wanted to have, quite rightly, a casting call. So we did have quite a big cattle call for a lot of actors to see who'd be there. But I pretty much knew that I wanted John Baddeley for the Colonel, because he'd already played, as I was saying earlier, he played Monty the violin in Oscar's orchestra, and Eve Karp had played Sylvia the flute in Oscar's orchestra. So I knew she had that light voice where she could be very motherly, and so I always wanted her to play that part. The big difficulty was, as I was saying earlier, Dennis. There was so many people cast for Dennis, but we were really pleased when we got Richard to do it. And everybody else came out of a big casting call, really. I think, was that the first time I worked with Colin McFarlane? He played Sergeant Slipper. He has a very deep baritone and very good comic timing, as did all the cast. So, big casting call, lots of meetings, but I think we got a good cast in the end.
Your Sergeant Slipper always kind of reminded me of the Naked Gun films, Frank Drebin. He was just so serious about the silliest gags, like speeding on a sofa.
Oh, yeah, I gave him a ticket for speeding on a sofa, that's right, yeah. Yeah, well, that's it, everybody had to take it seriously. You know, it was, comedy comes out of grounding stuff in even a false sense of reality, because if everybody's sort of jokey and being crazy, then there's nothing to rebel against or to offset the humour with.
I think the most underrated voice to me is Eve Karfa's mom. I don't know, I think she has the most motherly voice. You can see your own mother in her. She was so over the top. I think there was the one episode where she dusts the roses outside. I don't know why. I always found that so funny.
Yes, yeah. She was just the uber mom. Obviously a fairly stylized version of a mother, because I think they did a lot more. But I remember getting her to take a picture of Dennis next to her roses, because my mum
love that bit.
That. Don't know about your mum. I was always, come into the garden, Anthony. I need to take a photo. What, of me? No, the roses. Stand there next to them. And it was always when something came into bloom, we'd all be taken outside to be photographed.
Before I watched that episode again recently, I was with my sister, and she had her daughter with her, and she wants to take photos of her daughter all the time, and she literally does the Dennis the Menace smile, that forced kid smile where it's big teeth out, just so unnatural, and you just captured that perfectly in that moment with Dennis and Mom.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about John Baddeley. He passed away very recently. I think he was maybe my favorite voice on the show after Dennis. Just he's Colonel, he's Dad, just perfect. Yeah. Do you have any fun or interesting stories about John Baddeley?
I did go to his the service after he passed. And for a guy who was in his, I think it was late 80s, early 90s, it was a lot of people turned up because he was a great, very loved actor and family man. He was just wonderful meeting his family that day. But his comic timing was just great. I can remember him coming into the studio for the very first time. And he was very sort of old school, he had so many anecdotes about being in the theatre, and his timing was just perfect. And you could write anything and he'd make it sound funny. And so you're right to single him out as being a very special actor and a special person, because he was an absolute joy. We were lucky enough to work with him for, well, over 5 years, if you count working on Oscar's orchestra, and then pretty much straight into Dennis the Menace. So he was very much a part of the team.
What I think is genius about his performance and the writing for the character is, I remember as a kid, I kind of hated the Colonel. He was like the foil for Dennis.
Yeah.
Now, as an adult, rewatching it, he's the funniest character in the show. He has the best lines. Yeah. I think I said he's basically a Looney Tune. He just, one episode, he interrogates himself, completely deadpan, dead serious.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. I remember that one. Yeah. He writing for him, there were some later shows I did where I made a show called The Secret Show for older kids, and that had a cast, and they reminded me of John Baddeley in that whenever I was writing for them, it was like, oh, I can't wait to hear what they do with this. Not what they read that I've written, but what they will do with it, how they will take it to the next level. And John was one of those people. He took stuff to the next level. I remember that scene where he was interrogating himself. Other people had to put their hands over their mouths in the booth to stop laughing, because John Baddeley was going off on one and doing his thing. And no, he was a
fantastic,
great actor.
Great, powerful voice as well. When I was announcing I was finally going to review the series, the amount of comments I saw or messages, just people saying a likely story.
Oh yes, yeah, he did say that, didn't he? Yeah.
In the credits with that amazing theme song that everybody loves, and then everyone knows that one line near the end, a likely story.
Yeah.
Yeah, just now that's in my head all day. Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah.
I told some friends last week who aren't necessarily the Beano connoisseurs that I might be. I said, oh, I'm going to be interviewing you about the show. Yeah. And one person said, I don't know, I'd never watched the show really. And then off the top of their head, they could sing the song. Yeah. They knew two things. They knew the theme song and they knew the Bat Night Club. Those were the two things he remembered, and they only watched it maybe a couple times as a child.
Yeah, right. So I think the music is it's part of the armory, but it's I've often involved composers very, very early on in a production to get, again, I was talking about every show having its own tone and its own feel, and music can guide you that way. It can make you hold scenes for longer sometimes because the music can hold something. So, well, sometimes, no, not on Dennis, but later on in my career, we'd be getting the composers to do music cues based on chases or various emotions, and then we'd use them in the animatic just to pace the film correctly. It guides you emotionally when you're directing. It gives you the confidence to let certain scenes breathe.
Yeah.
If you've got the music behind it. Not just guide tracks, but something that you've actually had composed for the show.
Yeah, I've been trying to make a short animated film recently, and there was a scene in it that I thought might be good, but in my animatic, I'm like, it's a bit dry, but I put some just temporary music, and it just transforms it like, no, it's good. I don't need a cut. It will work. So with the theme as well, the reason I think it's so good, it might sound weird, I think the best themes almost sing the character's name. You think of the Superman, the movie music, it's just Superman.
Yeah.
And the Dennis the Menace, to me, it sounds like Dennis the Menace,
Yeah.
Just perfect synchronization with the character.
Yeah, no, it did work. I'm trying to remember the name of the composer. Have you got it there? I can't.
Not on me, but I can look it up. I'll mention it somewhere in the comments after I post it.
Please do.
In season 2, there was a big change up. It went from traditional cell animation to digital. We also get the characters kind of redesigned. Was this to simplify the characters? What was the reason behind the change? And was it to help the animators, or was it seen as a necessary upgrade to compete with other productions?
I think all of the above, apart from to compete with other productions, because you're in your own bubble when you're making these things. Also, we moved studio we had a studio in near Waterloo, And then we moved to bespoke building in Acton, and that was during the creation of Dennis. And at the same time, from series 1, it was old school. Everything was painted on cell. We'd do all the designs. And then in the Far East, I think it was in Korea, much like The Simpsons was done the same way, a lot of those shows. The mother country would do all the layouts and everything, and then it would go abroad for the animation. And it was just at the point where all of that stopped happening. And the drawings were, without getting too technical, were weren't traced off onto acetate anymore, onto that see-through plastic to go over the backgrounds. They were photocopied onto the acetate, and then it moved to the next stage where they were not just photocopied onto acetate, they were drawn conventionally and then scanned into the computer. So this is we're going back to the mid-90s here, but they were scanned into the computer and then coloured in the computer. So animation wasn't happening in the computer at that stage. The technology wasn't there, but the colorization of the shows and laying the drawings over scanned in backgrounds that were painted by conventionally. And so it was a halfway house. It was that transition was happening from drawn animation to computer animation. So in that way, we had to recolor everything. We weren't using the certain names of pots of paint anymore that we had abroad. It was now color charts based on computer technology. We also had the chance to redesign the characters, because you can't redesign halfway through 13 episodes. You do 13, look at it, and then you do a bit of a change. So, and I think it was Andrea Tran had come in as the key designer, a guy who I then worked with and directed a number of shows with. So Andrea did a slight redesign on everything to make things easier for everybody to follow the same designs. So yeah, it was a redesign, not just of artistically, but also within the computer technology of the time. Yeah, it was an upgrade.
I think that whole season 2, I don't know why, before I rewatched it, I thought I would prefer season 1, but season 2 is all bangers. So many great episodes. Yeah. I think one of my favorites is just, it's so simple. It was a game of catch, and in the game, Dennis loses to Walter, so he catches the Colonel, or he catches Slipper, and then there's this weird side plot of all the adults trying to tag each other.
Oh yeah, it's a game of tag that gets out of hand.
We interrupt your normal programme to bring a news flash. A simple children's game of tag has got horribly out of hand and is now affecting grown-ups. Sergeant Slipper is currently it.
Sergeant Slipper, what does it feel like to be it?
Very lonely. No one will come near me.
And now over to the painting competition.
About time!
Yeah, and years later, Catherine Tate would kind of take this joke. I don't know if she saw the episode, but she has a very funny sketch where they're like playing tag until they're dead.
No, I haven't seen that sketch, but I vaguely remember that episode because I haven't seen them for over 20 years, so...
I recommend them. They still hold up. Yeah. They're still very funny.
Great, I will have another look. I'll probably just be going, oh no, we could have done this, could have done that.
I don't know. Season 2 is, to me, it's flawless. So many great episodes.
Right.
One character I want to focus on, because he's kind of my favorite character. I don't know why. I like Walter the Softy.
Yeah.
And I think your show was the first media to kind of make Walter less of a softy, more of an antagonist. Because in the comic, he's just a very sweet boy who gets bullied by Dennis, and then usually by the end, something happens Dennis. But in your show, he's more rich, he's snobbish.
Yeah.
How did you go about translating his character and upgrading it?
Because that was the one character who absolutely needed to change, because he was bringing Dennis out in the worst possible way. Because, as you say, it was pure, unadulterated bullying. There was no... Dennis just took one look at him and is doing his homework and doing all the things that you're meant to do and skipping or something. And so he just beat him up in a sort of, with panache. It'd be funny and everything, but it still didn't translate. And so I thought, I'll have to make him into the sly nemesis of Dennis, somebody who doesn't get as angry as Dennis does and can actually think through plots to ensnare Dennis or do things to him. And also I gave him the girlfriend Matilda, because it was just, I thought waltzing Matilda So
Ah, of course.
it just made me think Walter and Matilda. It sounded like Waltzing Matilda. So that's why she's called Matilda.
I think Matilda was a great addition. She has some of my funniest lines where she's so impressed by Walter about the tell on Dennis. She's like, "Oh, Walter."
Yeah, it's also there were too many boys in the show, and you need people to talk to each other in order to get plots going forward. And I didn't want Dennis talking to Pieface and Curly, and then Walter talking to two other ciphers who appeared. It just became too similar. So I thought far better that he's almost like a middle class Mandarin with his wife pushing him to achieve. So I created that dynamic with them, so that there was a different way of giving exposition and dialogue and making things funny, because you're always looking for that different way into each character, so that you're not just giving the same lines to each, that they wouldn't say the same thing the same way.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's where formatting again is important, you know.
I think you did a good job as well of balancing his old personality. There's like little moments like when he hurts his mouth because Matilda didn't cut the crust off his sandwich.
Yeah.
Or when they go camping and he's not able to walk, so Matilda has to give him the piggyback. Just nice little details like that were still in there.
Yeah, it was in there just to show that he is slightly. He's not a physical person. He's one who thinks things through. He's the brains behind the operation. He's not the one who gets his hands dirty.
Yeah.
And it had to come from that side, not from him being someone that we'd feel sorry for or make him just appear somebody that we're making fun of, even as a character.
Yeah.
You know, these characters have to be believable in their own way.
I think his best episode is in season 2. I think it's called Snowbound. It's a snow day, and Dennis wants to get to schools to show he can be a prefect, and
Right.
Walter turns up and there's no one there, and he goes mad with power and becomes this school tyrant.
Oh yeah, it was almost like Lord of the Flies. They're just the two of them trapped.
Yeah. Just really well done.
Yeah. Oh, good.
And I think there was another episode, it kind of combines the two again. It was very Walter the Softy and Your New Walter, where he was mad the fairies were stealing all his teeth.
Oh.
So he goes to fairyland to steal them back.
Yeah, I was really pleased I got that one in, because I was able to. I'd written a short story about going down the bottom of your bed and finding that the sheets carried on down, and you were able to get to meet the fairies. So I sort of adapted that story and turned it into a Dennis episode. It was nice to sort of break free of the bounds of the normal format. It's important not to break format all the time, but doing something like that. Or there was a fairy tale one as well.
The Beanstalk one.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that one. My favourite line for that was, "We're going to have to sell the family pig so we can afford to buy some bacon."
Yeah, so funny. Rasher.
Yeah, Rasher yeah.
I feel like you're a fan of these kind of fairy imaginative worlds. Your short film is a Rarg, it's called.
Yeah.
It's kind of in another world. Well, I don't want to spoiler, but it's in a certain kind of world. And then you have new one that's been doing the film circuit at Drawingland.
Drawingland, yeah. There's with Rarg, which is spelled Rarg. I know it's on. You can Google it.
It's on YouTube.
On YouTube, it's been ripped and put on YouTube. So that was my student film at film school.
That's such a good suit. I would be so embarrassed to show you my student films. Yours is next level.
Well, mine was at the National Film and Television School, so that was when I was 22, 23. So it was I'd left art school. You know, I'd made some very short little films at Liverpool Art College, and then moved on to the National Film School. Made that film, which won some awards, and then that allowed us to form the company, and broke that catch-22 of nobody will finance you to make a film unless you've made a film.
Just going back quickly to the fairyland, I can't tell you how many times as a child I went under my bed blanket, crawling around, hoping to get to another world.
Yeah.
Just something about that episode, like, did something to my imagination when I was like 6 and 7, under the bed or in like a deep cupboard. Maybe how people felt about The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. That's how I felt after watching that episode.
No, there are lots of I sort of call them portal shows, where we made a TV series called Harry and His Bucket Full of Dinosaurs. And so it was a series of books by Ian Wybrow. And dinosaurs came out of a bucket and hung out with Harry. So it was Harry and His Bucket Full of Dinosaurs. But in the TV series, I formatted it so that Harry jumped into the bucket and went into Dino World with the dinosaurs. So portal shows where you jump into another world and then come out at the end of the episode. Loads of them. They did it with the Cat in the Hat. They got into the thingamajigger and they went off into a magical world, and then they'd come back. So there's loads of shows, portal shows. Starts off in reality, goes into the fantasy world through whatever, the wardrobe, and then back into reality at the end. It's sort of a well-worn format, really. So
yeah, it's well-worn because it's good. Children love it.
Yeah.
It works for a reason. And that episode, I don't know why, just when you mentioned it earlier, just all these memories came flooding back.
Yeah.
Me and my cousin Eddie pretending we were going to Fairyland because we watched Dennis the Menace.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of fun, that one.
Was there ever consideration to use other Beano characters, or were they off limits? And if you could, was there any character you would have enjoyed using?
I think I kind of touched on that. I was really pleased to get Nick Kelly in. It may have been,
yeah, Nick Kelly.
It may have just been totally arbitrary and no actual reason to have him in the show other than I really wanted to animate Nick Kelly, and then just found a way of putting him on the TV whilst they were at home. I can't remember now, but I remember in that episode I had Nick Kelly battling the two-dimensional man. The line was, don't let him turn sideways, because he always escaped by turning sideways. But I'd love to have made a Nick Kelly series, but mainly the Numskulls.
The Nick Kelly series, I think, would have been amazing. And I love the Numskulls. I wish we got a Numskull series.
Yeah. Like I say, I've written 4 episodes of that, and it's the best show I never made.
There's still time. You could make it. You never know.
No, I used to keep going back to DC Thompson about every 10 years when there'd been a change of people there and repitch it. But it's probably too dated now. But at the time, it was something, certainly, of if you were asking about other DC Thompson things, that was the one, the Numskulls, because it was a great format.
I've never understood how Ireland has the same problem as well, but Britain, they don't appreciate their wealth of characters that are wholly British.
Yeah.
To me, it makes more sense to do Beano characters that kids read and love. It's already got a built-in audience, but they're just not for it.
Well, it's an international business. I mean, you only finance a cartoon show by pre-selling it around the world, which does, to an extent, homogenize these shows to stop them from being... Like, I can't write shows about custard because England is the only place where kids eat custard, if they still do. I don't know. But you have to... That tends to be why things are fantasized to the degree they are, so that world building means that the world you've built is brand new and works across every country in the world, because the iconography is all created. You're not doing something in England where kids around the world are going, that's not me, that's not us.
I find it so short-sighted because 2 things that I think are very British and very Beano themselves are Mr. Bean.
Yeah.
Which loved around the world. I know he doesn't talk, which helps, but he's very British humour, very Beano. And there was a movie a few years ago, it might as well be called the Beano movie. It was Thunderpants. Did you ever watch Thunderpants?
Yes. Yeah, great stuff. It's I mean, there are glorious exceptions to every rule, but you'll find that when you're trying to get things financed, there are 1,000 reasons you'll be given why it shouldn't happen. And so it's anything that slows it down, you have to get around.
Yeah.
Being in rhyme, like you can't. It's very difficult to do anything in rhyme because it doesn't translate. So you can't do certain wordplay. You get told not to do.
Yeah. The only rhyme show I can think of was A Witch, a Giant, and a Wolf. There was a series around the same time as Dennis.
And those the shorts that are done by, is it Magic Light, who make the shorts of Room on the Broom.
I don't think I've seen those. I'll have to look those up. Room on the Broom.
Well, Room on the Broom is one. It was all the different books by... Everybody listening will remember the name of the person who wrote the books.
Yeah.
But anyway, they are massive best-selling books, which validates the fact that they're then made into films that rhyme. But as to TV series, pretty tricky. Again, I'm just saying these are a number of the things that don't happen simply because you have to sell to the world in order to finance the show.
Yeah, it's just the way it is.
It's the way it is, yeah.
Was there ever consideration for a season 3 of Dennis the Menace?
I think it had run its course at the time, and we'd sold it to America, which is why it was called Dennis and Nasher, because you're probably aware that there's a Dennis the Menace in America.
Yes.
Which and both cartoon strips they're very different, but still about a kid called Dennis who's a menace, began roughly the same time in the 1950s.
Same week.
Was it the same week?
Same
Gosh. And neither were aware of the other because the world was a lot further apart then. And by the time they discovered each other, it was too late for either to stop the other because they'd both been cemented into their regions. So
I think that's maybe the greatest coincidence ever. Two Dennis the Menaces, same week.
Yeah.
I think 7 days apart, if even. It's kind of confusing, but it was the same week.
Okay, that is incredible because and that's why we had to call it Dennis and Nasher when it went to America. Couldn't call it Dennis the Menace, so hence the name change.
Dennis and Nasher sounds like an easier show to sell than Dennis the Menace.
Yeah. Well, it has that naughty word menace, a negative word. So, yeah.
I think we covered your favorite episodes. Bat Nightclub, you liked the Fairyland, the Bed Portal episode, but what about characters? Was there any characters, one-off or regular, that you were fond of from the show, writing for?
I really liked Pieface because he was an innocent, and I remember, I think it was one of the final episodes where, and I heard the joke years later by somebody. Dennis was up in his treehouse, and Pieface says, "Can I come up?" And Dennis says, "No, I want to be alone." Pieface goes, "Yeah, me too." Starts climbing to the lap, meeting. He had a nice gentleness to him, Pieface. He saw the best in everybody, and I really liked writing for him.
He had a lot of really great lines. I don't know why, it's always been stuck in my head where someone says, "Is Pieface your real name?" And he says, "Well, my real name's Kevin, but I don't eat Kevin, right, so I eat pies."
Yeah, I remember that. I've forgotten that, yeah. Yeah.
I think your show is the only reason I like Pieface, because I read the Beano after the show. That's why I bought the Beano, because I saw that's Dennis the Menace. I loved the cartoon, and
yeah.
Again, I see people complain about modern Dennis or Beano, saying like it's too much like the TV show. But when you're a kid, it's what you want. If you see the show and you see the Beano, you want it to be like what you see on TV.
Yeah, you can't overthink it. It's got to, I mean, they do influence each other, and I know they did put the Colonel and Sergeant
and Slipper
that backdrafted into the Beano quite brightly. They're trying to keep them both going together. So yeah, I never did watch. I think the last one was totally CGI, wasn't it?
Yeah, it doesn't even feel like Dennis the Menace. All it has is the jumper and Nasher.
Yeah, but then again, I haven't talked to an 8-year-old, so anybody who was 8 at the time, they may give a complete. Because you always think in my day things were better, but
yeah,
things evolve, and thank goodness they do. You know, it'd be awful if everything stayed the same.
There's people from the 60s and 70s who are still mad they don't beat the kids with slippers at the end of every comic anymore.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's yeah. So yes, yeah, maybe change is good on occasion.
I think so. You worked on a lot of other cartoons up to 2019. Is there any other show you have a particular fondness for? So outside of Dennis the Menace, what would be one of your favorite shows you've worked on?
The Secret Show. I mean, I think Dennis was right up there. It was, I think, 3 shows. Dennis, a weird one called Yoko, Giacomoko, Toto. That was a preschool show. And The Secret Show. Ironically named The Secret Show because I don't think anybody saw it, but it it went out for a couple of years on CBBC, and yeah, it was for the same age group as Dennis. It was a spy show, and we made it all in-house, all on an animation system called Cell Action.
When did that show come out?
Maybe 2009, 10?
2009. I think around that time, just spy shows were popular. It's just Totally Spies, Kim Possible, so there was a real spy trend for a while.
Yeah, there was a lot of spies going on. I mean, I based it around a show that I'd watched as a kid, Man from U.N.C.L.E.
I've seen a few episodes of that. I used to be on the TV back in the day.
So it was just a spy show, but just a funny spy show. So we enjoyed doing that. Did 2 seasons of that. Yeah, so yeah, basically did series animation for 30 years, and then and I just wanted to write for grown-ups or do other things. So I've sort of I wound everything down in 2019, and then COVID hit. Who knew?
Yeah.
So I got out just before COVID, and I've been writing and drawing. I've turned into a student again, making short films, doing the festival circuits, comedy poetry on the open mic circuit around London. So yeah, I'm a student again now, just hanging out, doing short films and drawing.
It's the best way to be.
Yeah.
Speaking of your drawing, your art is beautiful. When I I contacted you. I had a look at some of your art on your Instagram. I seen clips for your different short films. There was one picture. I said it to you in the message. I forget it now. I found it very funny. It was like a COVID. It was something with a COVID test. You did like not a drawing, but you kind of made an art piece out of it.
Yeah. It was. I think the wife and I tested negative before going off somewhere. So I turned the two negative COVID things into characters dancing for joy.
Yeah, it was good. But yeah, very creative, really beautiful art. And if anyone wants to follow you, I'm going to put a link in the top comment. But you've got a few Instagrams, drone_2_verse.
Yeah, Drawn to Verse. So that's sort of comedic poetry stuff that I've been doing for the last year around this poetry circuit. So there's artwork of that and crazy stuff on there. The other Instagram sites are pretty dead right now because they were, when I make a film, you start an Instagram site.
Yeah.
So there's one for Lucy in Drawing Land, which is a pilot for a TV series, which I might make a few more episodes of at home.
Well, I hope so. I haven't seen it. I'm hoping, I don't know if your film circuit will reach Ireland, but if it does, I'd love to go watch that one.
Yeah, both that one and Candle Cops, which was a police procedural drama with candles.
Yeah.
Very surreal. So that both have been around, had their 2 years on the festival circuits. I'm making a sequel to Candle Cops. Candle Cops, if you type that into Google, you'll see some trails for it. But I've kept both films off social media. I'm keeping them back in case I do other things with them.
Yeah, of course.
They're shown on festival circuit things, and trailers for them are around and about, I think.
Kind of a short trailer.
Well, it's trailing a short film, so the trailer has to be shorter than
shorter than the film.
Right?
I get it.
It's any longer, and
it's
the film.
It's the film. I got it.
A good festival to enter for me, because I can watch it, is the Galway Film Festival, which I think is Oscar credited. So Galway Film Festival.
I'm writing that down.
I'll send you the link because it's really the Galway Film Fla, but Fla is Irish. But Galway Film Festival.
Okay.
I recommend entering it. I might know someone. Maybe I'll drop your name in. So
great. Yes, it will. Yeah, absolutely. Any chance to get away, come over to Galway. It'd be great.
And I guess one more question and we'll finish up. I don't want to take too much more of your time. You've been very generous so far. What advice would you have for young artists and animators today? Something you wish you had known when you started?
I think the main thing is if you can draw, and it's hard to put the time in to learn how to draw to a high degree because of all the social media that's around you, giving you the attention span. It's tricky to get, but anyone who can genuinely draw in a multitude of different styles and have that base ability through life drawing or just drawing all the time, to be a chameleon in styles so that you are then absolutely employable. You're always going to be employed because there are very few people who can draw to a very, very high level. And that does come from an innate talent followed by practice, 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 because you want to practice, not because you feel you should. It has to become a part of who you are. It's vocational. And I think one of the things that parents ask me is, should I let my son go to art school? Do you think he'll get through it? Is there still a career at art school? We're a bit worried. And I always say, well, you're your child's first hurdle.
Yeah.
Because it's about being so vocational about it that if you can put them off, then they're probably not got it deep within them to do this. And it is a vocation. It's like any other vocation to be an artist, be it drawn or writing or even be a dancer. And the same is true of being a mathematician. But for some reason, parents are quite happy for children to do maths and science. But when it comes to the arts, and it is true, it's a trickier road to forming, getting a career and earning a living.
Yeah.
But every artist I've spoken to will tell you a different story of how they got to where they are. There's no one route to it. So I'm afraid it's a very simple question you're asking, and sometimes simple questions don't have simple answers.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately. I'd love to give you the 10 ways to make it all work. And these lists are so seductive, aren't they, that if you just follow these 10 things, but there aren't 10 rules. It comes from within, and you go on your own journey and have the resolve to carry on and not give up, not blink.
I think that's the best way to end this interview. So this was a likely story with Tony Collingwood. Thanks so much for giving me your time, and who knows, maybe I'll interview you again in the future about more Dennis the Menace or about some of your animated short films.
Sure, anytime. It's been great speaking to you. Thanks very much for calling.
And that was Tony Collingwood. What a lovely, lovely man. I forgot to ask him about Gnasher's fleas, but that's okay. He spent an hour telling me everything else I wanted to know. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and if you did, please make sure to leave a comment, like, hype. You know the story. Go on. You know you want to.